Alright, so I had early access to Alien Rogue Incursion on the MetaQuest headset, and this video is not going to be a full-on review of that game. I already reviewed it, and suffice it to say that that game on PCVR is the exact same beat for beat as it is on MetaQuest, which is impressive all by itself. But if you want to know more about that, go watch it. I'm going to touch on some of it here, but the ups, the downs, you want to go watch that. As far as how does this compare to that PCVR game, it's interesting. As I said, beat for beat, it's the exact same thing. But there are a lot of noticeable aspects that they had to reduce and boil down to make it work on this system. We're going to get into it. You're watching Bringhurst VR. All right, so as I said, this is the same as PCVR. Like, story-wise, beat for beat, even the things I hated, it all fits here. It's all the same thing. And the things I liked, it's all here. It's all the same thing. The difference between these two games is mostly what was most noticeable right out the gate is the resolution. It's pretty cut down. I didn't even try using the Quest Games Optimizer because it already struggles just with the frame rate and just loading and booting up. On top of that, the render distance is reduced quite a bit as well. For instance, here, I'm outside and there's a fog that kind of limits how far out you can see. And there's this threshold where over the course of 3 feet, a fire appears. It wasn't rendering it before that, and though less noticeable in the skyline, you see kind of buildings popping in as well. But it's muted by the fact that it's dark and it's foggy and it's far away. But that fire, arguably, it's the brightest thing in that scene, or should be, but you can't see it in the distance. And so that's, a good example of one of the many things that they're kind of cutting down. In the PCVR game, you can see it from a distance, it glows and kind of illuminates the fog around it. That's not happening here. A lot of the glossy textures, especially like slime on the aliens themselves, on the xenomorphs, is dumbed down quite a bit too.
Research.
No sign of Carver yet. I'll have to find someone else's then. So this is why you called us, Carver. Davis, I've got bad news. We've got X-rays. So this is why you called us, Carver. Davis, I've got bad news. We've got X-rays.
All in all, it's impressive that they got this game to work on the Quest headset. And while the fog does a good job at kind of carrying the effects, because a lot of what this game is, what it's built on, is this render distance where you can't see too far ahead of you, the fog is thick, and you rely on your auditory senses. You hear something scurrying along the rooftop, and lo and behold, an alien runs down and you gotta kill it and all this stuff. And so that aspect of the game is still alive and well, and the flashlight, the way the light bounces, and even something as simple as like your gadget that you gotta pull out that's got your map, your docket at computers. When you hold that and kind of tilt it, and there's a gloss to it that looks really good on the MetaQuest 3. But notably, the reflection that you see in that is, we have this in like Strata 3D. It's not reflecting the world around you, it's reflecting a pre-built light dome. And it looks good, like it really does. The stereoscopic effect between the two eyes, it doesn't matter that it's reflecting these overhead lights that aren't actually there. It still looks good. The game looks good, honestly. The fact that they got it to work here. I'm talking about textures and how, things aren't as pretty or glossy or slimy as is on PCVR. But given how close it is, it's impressive, it's cool. And if you don't have access to PCVR, playing this on the Quest, you're gonna have a pretty close experience to that. In my opinion, the thing you're giving up the most is the resolution. But if you're afraid of aliens, then, you might not even notice. You get stuck in the moment. But having said that, I didn't play very far into this second time because I'm really focused. I've already reviewed it. It's the same thing. I'm focused on what are the effects like between one platform to the next. And one of my gripes that I had that first time around was that it was difficult to reach into objects. It was difficult to pick things up. It would cling to your hand, or your foot would get stuck in a bucket and you go clanking around. And while I don't want to say that it's resolved, I will say that I didn't experience it up to this point. Instead, something that I'm quite sure I was previously able to pick up is now mounted to the table. And if I try to grab it, if you try to grab anything in this game and then walk away, your hand will just stretch and disappear. Like you could leave the room. I left the room. I went downstairs, but my arm is still clinging to it. I'm still holding the grip button, and you can see my waking out and freaking out. I mean, just don't do that. Fine. But it's weird that I can do that. But I've got other complaints now that weren't in my original review. That thing where I can grab something and walk away and my arms just become noodles and they stretch. It's really stupid. I can't believe that that exists in this game. Was that always there, or is it new, or I don't know, but the fact I can do it, it's unforgivable. On top of that, you have, as I mentioned, that dock, this handheld computer that you use everything for. And it's not possible to just leave it at the table. You can't just drop it and walk away and then think, oh my gosh, where is it? It's always on you. And so whether you throw it down the hall or you just release and it kind of zaps and diminishes and disappears and it's on your person again, just magic. However you get rid of it, it's always still there. And a lot of the time, for all of these objects that are always kind of anchored to you, if you just let go, it's supposed to zip back. It just kind of disappears. But that only works like 30% of the time. And so it's almost like an itch that you desperately want to scratch, where you know that you could just drop it and leave it there and walk away, and you know that if you do the grab button, it'll be there again. But it's pretty stupid that it doesn't do that. It feels like you want it to kind of fling back into your inventory, and it doesn't work. It's a bug that isn't game breaking, but it's stupid. And between me playing Rogue Incursion on PCVR and playing it now on the Quest, in between that, I spent a bunch of time, for the first time, in Alien Isolation with the VR Mother mod. And I gotta say, it's changed my perspective a bit on this game. I mean, there are moments in this game that are just phenomenal. Very cool. Very scary and intense, and this kind of body horror stuff that only a game like this can provide. But the xenomorphs, they suck in this. I mean, it means nothing to be running from a xenomorph when they're one of 45 villains that you're going to encounter in any one level, and they can be killed with 15 shots to the head. And they kind of scurry down like raccoons and then stand up in front of you and then kind of walk towards you, just like begging you to shoot them. It has none of the punch that Alien Isolation did when there was one creature in the ship and you had no idea where it was, and it was dark and dank and it was terrifying. You'd never fought it. You'd never confronted it. If anything, it's killed you 50 times and you'd had to start over at this point. But this, it's just like there's so many of them and they're so easy to kill and it's not scary. Now, granted, there are moments later on in the game where it is claustrophobic and it is scary, but it's scary because you know that there is an alien in your vicinity and you're dealing with like face huggers for the first time. That's my 2 cents. All in all, I'll say that this game holds true to the PCVR version, and if you don't have access to that higher definition version, this does it justice. And if you want it, I have a link down below that'll save you 10% off, and it's a great way of supporting my channel. I also have a website link down below where you'll have access to every single MetaQuest game, and depending on the time of the year, you'll have between 10 and 20% off as well. You'll save money. It's a great way of supporting my channel, and I'd sure appreciate it. Please subscribe, like this video. Really glad you guys are here. You guys have been watching Bringhurst VR. Godspeed.